Hi, I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell here at the Unity Center in San Diego. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, please consider making a contribution. Go to our website. It's easy to do. Thank you in advance for that contribution. Well, Jesus gave us a parable, actually, that really helps us to understand some of our point of view, and it has to do with our minds. He spoke in parables, and he spoke in stories as a way of teaching. Today, I want to talk to you about differing mindsets and how important it is that we pay attention to the quality of our thinking and the quality of our consciousness, because it really does influence our point of view and what we see when the day is through. So the parable is a parable of the sower and the seed. Let me read it to you. It comes from the Gospel of Matthew. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let him hear. You know, Jesus, when he spoke in parables, he spoke using the everyday elements of what people in his world were familiar with. Vineyards and stewards and coins and fish and flowers and seeds and sowers. I rather think if he were here today, he wouldn't be using those examples. He might be using as examples cell phones and Facebook and social media and solar energy and electric powered cars and the things that we live with in our world today. But he used the common elements to try to help expand consciousness, or to try to help teach his followers. And so in peeling back what this parable is saying to us, we get a glimpse into the deeper teaching that he was trying to give us. These parables were given to help bring about a change in consciousness, a change in the way people looked at their lives and looked at each other. But to grasp the deeper meaning, we have to listen for the higher truth. He said, if you have ears, you will listen. If you have ears, in other words, pay attention, peel back and look for the deeper meaning. It often takes an extremity, I think, in life to open us up to a deeper truth. My friend and ministerial colleague, Michael Beckwith, says, the pain pushes until the vision pulls. That's the idea of the extremity sometimes being the very thing that wakes us up, that cosmic 2x4. In some ways, we are living the shared experience of a global cosmic 2x4 as a result of this pandemic, providing us the opportunity to really wake up and take a look not only how we are living our lives individually, but how we are living our lives collectively as a human family. He goes on in that parable to say, or the disciples, he's giving this teaching, and then the disciples have a question about it, and they ask him, why do you speak in parables? Why are you speaking in story form? And this is what Jesus replies. He says, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand, because they're looking at the surface. They're looking at the surface. He's wanting us to look, as every spiritual teacher does, is wanting us to look deeper. Now, the parable of the sower and the seeds, we have to appreciate that the way that seeds were sown then is very different than the way that they are in our modern farming techniques. They were sown by hand. And so when a farmer would go out to sow and take the seed, some of it did indeed scatter in places that the farmer did not intend for it to land. But be that as it may, the seeds responded according to where they landed. So what do each of these elements represent in us? What's the deeper meaning of each of these elements? We have the sower, right? And in looking at that, we can say that the sower is spirit. The sower is God. The seed is divine ideas, divine possibilities. You've had them scattered in your lives. Spirit, the infinite, the divine, the one, whatever name you give to God, has absolutely sown seeds of truth and possibility and inspiration in your life as God has in mine. God is the sower. The seed is the divine idea, the truth, the possibility. Our mind, our consciousness is the soil. The truth is the seed is always being sown. You and I truly do live in a field of infinite possibility, of infinite possibility. The possibilities aren't any lessened because of the pandemic or because of racial strife or because of economic situation. We still live in the same infinite field of possibility. But what will determine our personal and our collective harvest is going to be the mindset, the consciousness on which those divine ideas, those infinite possibilities land. It is the mind that sees or limits whatever it is noticing. Irvin Seal wrote a great book. The title is Learn to Live, The Meaning of the Parables, author of the 10 Words That Will Change Your Life. He was a mystical, metaphysical minister. I believe he was part of the Church of Truth. In his book, he brings out some ideas about the parable of the sower, and he says that what we are qualifies and conditions what we see and what we hear and the way we respond to different people and to different events. He goes on to say, because I project my own world out of my own consciousness, and you similarly project yours, what is brick to me may be straw to you, and vice versa. It is the soil of my own mind which produces that green tree in the yard, and it is the soil of your own mind which produces that green tree for you. You and I take it for granted that we see the same tree, but we don't. Take that in for a moment. That's really important. You and I take it for granted that we see the same tree, but we don't. The tree that I see is a tree that is actually there, plus the amalgamation of all that my mind has read, heard, and experienced of trees. And so it is with your mind. We are individual soil types giving rise to different kinds of growth within our consciousness and experience. We are individual soil types giving rise to different growth within our consciousness. So let's take a look now at the different kinds of minds, the different kinds of soil that seed landed upon. So the seed was the same. The seed was the same. God wasn't playing any favorites. God doesn't play any favorites with you or me or the other person. The determining factor, the differentiating factor is the mind, is consciousness. And so in the first kind of soil that Jesus illustrates in this parable is the seed that fell on the path. And here the birds came and ate it up, we're told, and it had no chance to take root. It fell on the hardened path. If you've ever gone hiking and you've been on a popular trail or a popular path, you know that the soil on that path is hardened. It's hard. Seeds don't do well on hard soil. Divine ideas don't work really well in closed, hard, unresponsive minds. I was thinking about how we don't start off with a closed, hard, unresponsive mind. Have you ever noticed that, toddlers, young children, their minds are not closed and hard and unresponsive. We do not start out that way. We start out very differently, with a mind that's very malleable, with a mind that's very impressionable, with a mind that's ready to receive. We have to be careful what we're planting in there, but we don't start out with this hard mind. And so this seed that fell on the path, the birds ate it. It had no chance to take root. It was on the hardened, trodden path. It couldn't multiply. It didn't have a chance. It wasn't taken in by any degree of receptivity. In us, it is the unresponsive mind, the hardened mind, the cynical mind. Boy, we really need to watch that right now, don't we? This is a time where cynicism seems to be the new thing. We've got to change that. We've got to be open to what the possibilities can be and work toward that. We need to have a more child-not-ish mind, but a more childlike mind that is responsive and receptive. The second kind of seed fell on rocky places. It didn't have much soil, but it did have some, and so it sprang up quickly. But it sprang up so quickly and the sun came out that because there was no depth to the root, the sun scorched those tender little plants. In us, it is the mindset that initially responds favorably to a new idea, jumps right in, but has no real staying power. Have you ever been around people like that? Or do you notice those tendencies in yourself to jump right in, but not to stay in? The minute it gets a little bit hot, the minute it gets a little bit difficult, the minute you've got to dig a deeper capacity of faith and belief and trust and work, you go, let me go on to something else. Nothing good happens with that kind of mindset. The potential was still there. The potential in that seed was still there. And it had a chance, right? It sprang up, but it didn't stay the course. You and I, when we find a place that we want to land, whether it's in a relationship or a spiritual community or in a lifestyle, it's important that once we really have thoughtfully selected, that we then put down some roots and we do the deeper inner work. Irvin Seal, in his book on the parable, Learning from the Parables, suggests that this seed that falls on the rocky places also kind of represents the extreme idealist who is so idealistic that they have no feet on the ground and therefore can't give any real foundation or really any true substance to the idea that they have. Got to have both the vision and the idealism and the pragmatism as well. And then Jesus gives us the illustration of the seed that fell among the thorns. What do you think that might be referring to? The divine ideas that fall among the thorns that grow up and choke the life out of that plant. It's struggling. What is that in you? What kind of mindset do you think that is? First thing that comes to my mind is the mindset that doesn't keep up its prayer work. The mindset that doesn't recognize there's nobody else in here thinking my thoughts. Whatever thoughts I'm allowing to come in and stay in is nobody else's responsibility, nobody else's fault, nobody else's credit if they happen to be really good thoughts I'm holding on to. It's mine. One of the most fundamental aspects of metaphysics is working at the level of the mind. The Buddha emphasized this as well, talking about the challenges of an untrained mind and holding up the practice of meditation as a way to train the unruliness of our minds. Our prayer work is really important. And especially if we are in places or families or environments where we seem to be so bombarded with the negativity that it will choke out the life in us, if we don't stay vigilant in pulling out those thorns and pulling out those weeds. We can also say that the seed that fell among the thorns is like the mind that is preoccupied and easily distracted. The mind that perhaps overthinks everything. Have you ever been like that? I know I have from time to time in various things where I will be overthinking it instead of going, wait a minute, let me step back for a moment. Let me take a breath. Let me give God some room to make this a little bit easier for me to see a little bit more clearly. Irvin Seal writes about this. He says, if you are not well grounded in the spiritual law and do not have confidence in your ability to choose, then these opposites will quarrel in your mind. And in most cases, fear will get the better of faith and choke out the good seed. Fear will get the better of faith and choke out the good seed. That's a really important line to remember, to ask ourselves, wait a minute, is fear choking out my faith right now? Is fear choking out the possibility of this divine idea, the possibility of a vision of something better for me, for my family, for my community? The only way that we can take care of those thorns and not let them choke out the potential of that seed is through mindfulness, through being a good gatekeeper of what we allow to stay in our consciousness. That would be a huge step forward. It may take us a very long time to never allow a thorny, fearful, negative thought to enter into our consciousness at all. It may take a long time before we get to that degree of mindfulness practice. But man, can we make great strides if we will simply pay closer attention to what we're allowing to become dominant and recyclable. I don't think that's the right use of the word there, but recurring in our consciousness. That's where we need the deliberateness. That's where we need to be diligent in our prayer work at the level of the mind. And so you see in this parable of the sower and the seed, the sower sows in this parable indiscriminately. God gives divine ideas to all of us equally because it's about the reality of us living in the field of infinite possibility. That's the field of the seed of what is possible for each and every one of us, playing no favorites whatsoever. But that seed lands differently on different minds, and therefore the harvest of it is very, very different. We know that certain plants only grow in certain kinds of soil. I was fascinated to learn about fireweed, which is a very special kind of plant from which bees gather and make a really excellent honey. But fireweed is only produced after a severe fire, and then the plant regrows. So sometimes there's got to be this clearing out, right? This clearing out. And then Jesus tells us that some seed fell on good soil. Some seed fell on good soil. In us, it is the responsive mind. I believe it's in Japanese, there's a term, shoshin, which means beginner's mind. And it doesn't refer to beginner's mind only at the beginning of learning something new. It refers to consistently approaching life and experiences and your art and your practice and your work, no matter how accomplished you are, to continue to approach it with a beginner's mind. That is a mind that is responsive. That is a mind that is soil that has been well churned and made loose so that when that seed drops in and water penetrates that soil and the sun does what it does with its magic, that seed has a chance to take root, firm root, and to then really begin to grow. And we're told, Jesus tells us in the parable, that seed that falls on that responsive soil produces 160, 30-fold. I'd say those are pretty good returns, wouldn't you? pretty good returns. And so what he's really saying to us, I believe, is to continually work at the level of our minds. And so as you go about your personal life this week, your work life this week, I really encourage you to pay attention to the next idea that someone suggests to you or that plops in your mind, and notice how you receive it. Are you like the seed that fell on the path where your first reaction is, it'll never work? Are you closed and hardened and cynical to it? Do you jump right in and go, oh, yeah, but then you're not willing to really stay the course and do the work? The seed that fell among the, which one was it? On the rocky places? Or are you like do you respond to it where the negativity and all the things that won't work pop in? Just notice and try to notice without any sense of judgment about it. I mean, don't make yourself wrong. Make yourself right for the fact that you're paying attention and that you're noticing. Because therein lies the power. Therein lies the power. To pay attention, to notice how you're responding to a divine idea and possibility. And if you're not responding in a responsive way, get to work and churn up that soil. Namaste.